old woman. You still think your son will save you? My son will come back. One day.
Wait! Now her son be this.
You came back.
Greetings, friends. An old woman was selling tomatoes in the rain when rich people mocked her, kicked her vegetables into dirty water, and called her useless in front of the entire market. But only a few hours later, military convoys suddenly surrounded the market, and the powerful men who humiliated her started trembling in fear. Nobody there knew one terrifying truth. The poor old woman they insulted was the mother of one of the most feared soldiers in Nigeria. Watch until the end, because at the end we reveal the secret that changed the entire market forever and made thousands of people cry after discovering who Mama Grace truly was. But before that, please write in the comments where you are from. Hopefully those who have liked and subscribed to this channel will always be given health and have their fortunes smooth, their debts paid off. Amen. Dark clouds covered the sky above the old market in Enugu, and cold wind moved through the narrow streets like a warning. Most traders rushed to protect their goods with plastic covers and old sacks, but one small corner near the drainage path remained exposed to the heavy weather. Mama Grace sat there alone. Her wooden table was old and uneven. One side leaned lower because one of the legs had broken months ago. Small baskets of tomatoes, peppers, onions, and green vegetables sat carefully arranged in front of her, protected only by a faded blue nylon sheet tied with ropes. Water dripped from the edge of the plastic onto her shoulders. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the vegetables one by one. People walked past her quickly without stopping. Some stepped over muddy water. Others carried expensive umbrellas while avoiding eye contact with the old woman sitting quietly near the gutter. The market slowly became crowded as the morning continued. Vendors shouted prices from different directions. Children ran between stalls. Motorcycles splashed dirty water onto the road. Loud Afrobeats music played from a nearby electronics shop. But even with all the noise around her, Mama Grace looked alone. Very alone. A younger trader named Ngozi glanced at her from a nearby stall and shook her head slowly. You came again in this rain, Mama Grace. Mama Grace forced a weak smile. If I stay home, who will buy food for me? Ngozi sighed. At least wait until the rain stops. Mama Grace carefully touched the tomatoes beside her. Rain does not stop hunger. Ngozi looked away because she had no answer. Everyone in that market knew Mama Grace. Some people respected her. Many pitied her. Others laughed at her behind her back. For years, she had sold vegetables in the same corner of the market. She never begged anyone. She never fought with people. Even when customers insulted her or refused to pay full price, she simply nodded quietly and moved on. But the market had changed over the years. Rich traders had taken over most of the good spaces. Poor sellers were pushed closer to the drainage area. And the most feared man in that market controlled everything. Chief Boko, the chairman of the market union. A rich businessman with political connections and armed security guards. Nobody challenged him. Nobody questioned his taxes. Nobody dared refuse his orders. If Chief Boko wanted your store removed, it disappeared before sunset. If he wanted your goods seized, nobody could stop him. And for some reason, he hated Mama Grace. The rain became heavier. Water flowed beside Mama Grace's feet. She pulled her wrapper higher to avoid the mud while quietly arranging her vegetables again. A black luxury SUV suddenly entered the market road. Several traders immediately stood straighter. Others quickly cleared the way. The car stopped near the center of the market. Two bodyguards stepped out first. Then Chief Boko emerged slowly from the back seat. He wore an expensive white outfit with gold embroidery and polished black shoes untouched by mud. A large gold watch covered his wrist. He held a black umbrella while one of his guards followed closely behind him. People greeted him carefully. Good morning, Chief. Welcome, Chief Boko. Morning, sir. Chief Boko nodded proudly as he walked through the market like a king inspecting his land. Beside him walked his daughter, Anita. She was dressed in bright designer clothes and carried a small handbag worth more than what most traders earned in a year. Her face showed permanent annoyance, as if the entire market smelled bad to her. She covered her nose dramatically while walking past poor traders. Why is this place always dirty? She complained loudly. Chief Boko laughed. Because poor people are comfortable living like animals. Some traders laughed nervously even though the joke made them uncomfortable. Mama Grace lowered her head and continued arranging vegetables, hoping they would pass without noticing her. But Anita suddenly stopped walking. Her eyes landed directly on Mama Grace's small stall. The old woman froze slightly. Anita smirked. Oh, she's still here. Chief Boko followed her gaze and laughed softly. This old woman again. Anita stepped closer carefully to avoid muddy water. I thought we warned her last week. Mama Grace stood slowly. Good morning, Chief. Chief Boko looked around dramatically before speaking loudly enough for nearby traders to hear. Why are you still selling here? This place is for serious business people. Mama Grace swallowed carefully. I already paid yesterday's fee. Chief Boko smiled coldly. You paid late. I had no money before evening. That is not my problem. Some traders nearby pretended to focus on their goods, avoiding eye contact. Nobody wanted trouble. Mama Grace held her wrapper tightly. I will pay earlier today. Chief Boko stepped closer. You poor people always have excuses. Anita looked at the tomatoes on the table and laughed. Who will even buy these old vegetables? Mama Grace remained silent. Chief Boko pointed around the market proudly. Look around you. Modern traders are upgrading this market. Then people like you sit here beside the gutter making the place ugly. Rainwater dripped heavily beside Mama Grace's feet. She quietly bent down to adjust one falling basket. Anita suddenly kicked the basket hard. Tomatoes scattered into muddy water. Several rolled directly into the drainage. Mama Grace gasped softly. Nearby traders looked shocked but stayed silent. Anita laughed loudly. Oops. Chief Boko smiled instead of stopping her. Mama Grace quickly knelt into the mud trying to save the tomatoes before the dirty water carried them away. Her old hands trembled badly. Some children nearby laughed. Others watched quietly. One tomato floated into the gutter water and disappeared. Mama Grace picked another one slowly and wiped it with her wrapper. Anita shook her head. This is disgusting. Chief Boko looked around at the crowd. People like this bring shame to the market. Then he looked directly at Mama Grace. Where is your son? The market became quieter. Mama Grace stopped moving. Chief Boko continued. You always say your son works for the army. Several traders exchanged glances. They had heard that story many times. Mama Grace rarely talked about her son, but when she did, her tired face always softened with pride. Still, many people doubted her. Anita folded her arms. If your son is really in the army, why are you still suffering here? A few people laughed quietly. Chief Boko smiled wider. Maybe the army rejected him too. More laughter spread. Mama Grace lowered her eyes. Rain continued falling onto her gray hair. My son serves the country, she whispered. Chief Boko leaned closer mockingly. And what has the country done for you? Mama Grace remained silent. Anita shook her head. Your son abandoned you? That sentence hit harder than the rain. Mama Grace's lips trembled slightly. But she said nothing. Because deep inside her heart, she still believed in her son. Even after years without seeing him. Even after months without hearing his voice. Even after many nights wondering whether he was alive. She still believed. Chief Boko turned away dismissively. Remove her table before evening, he ordered one of the guards. Yes, Chief. As they began walking away, Anita looked back one last time. You should stop pretending your son is important. The SUV drove deeper into the market while laughter slowly faded behind them. Mama Grace remained kneeling in the mud. Her vegetables were ruined. Water soaked through her clothes. Her breathing became uneven as she quietly gathered the remaining tomatoes into the basket. Ngozi rushed toward her. Mama Grace, are you all right? Mama Grace nodded weakly. I am fine. But her voice sounded broken. Ngozi crouched beside her angrily. That girl is wicked. Mama Grace forced another small smile. Leave it. Trouble passes. Ngozi helped collect the vegetables silently. Across the road, a young motorcycle rider watched everything carefully. His name was Ton. He often carried passengers around the market area and sometimes helped Mama Grace transport vegetables home after closing. Unlike most people there, Ton was not afraid to show sympathy. He parked his motorcycle and walked toward her. Mama Grace. She looked up slowly. Ton's face tightened with anger after seeing the ruined vegetables. They crossed the line today. Mama Grace shook her head gently. Do not fight them. But everyone saw what happened. Let it go. Ton looked toward the direction where Chief Boko had disappeared. One day somebody will stand against that man. Mama Grace sighed tiredly. Power is difficult to fight. Ton crouched beside her and helped wipe mud off the remaining tomatoes. Rain continued pouring around them. Then suddenly, Mama Grace stopped moving. Her eyes focused somewhere far away. A strange silence crossed her face. Ton noticed immediately. Mama Grace. She blinked slowly. For some reason, my heart feels uneasy today. Ngozi looked at her carefully. What do you mean? Mama Grace stared at the road leading outside the market. I do not know. Far away from Enugu. Several military vehicles moved quickly along a wet highway. Heavy tires splashed water across the road. Armed soldiers sat inside quietly. At the front convoy vehicle, a tall officer stared silently through the rain-covered window. His sharp military uniform carried the name. Colonel David Okoro. And in his hand was an old photograph of a smiling woman standing beside baskets of tomatoes. His mother. Mama Grace. The rain continued long after the market began to empty. Most traders packed their goods early and rushed home before the flooding became worse. Wooden tables disappeared one after another. Tarpaulins flapped violently in the wind. Dirty water carried leaves, plastic bottles, and rotten vegetables through the narrow drainage paths beside the road. But Mama Grace remained there longer than everyone else. She sat quietly beside her half-empty baskets while cold rainwater soaked through her wrapper and blouse. Her fingers moved slowly as she separated the damaged tomatoes from the ones she could still sell tomorrow. Ngozi stood nearby holding an umbrella above her. Mama Grace, let me help you go home. Mama Grace shook her head gently. I still need to arrange this. You can do it tomorrow. If I leave them like this, they will spoil. Ngozi sighed deeply. She had seen this same stubborn strength for many years. Mama Grace never stopped working no matter how sick, hungry, or tired she became. Ton returned with his motorcycle and parked beside them. I will carry her home, he said. Mama Grace smiled weakly. Thank you, my son. The word my son always touched Ton deeply because he knew Mama Grace spoke from the heart. She treated many young people in the market like family even though she had almost nothing for herself. Together, they packed the remaining vegetables into 2 old baskets tied with rope. As Ton lifted the heavier basket onto the motorcycle, he frowned. You lost too much today. Mama Grace quietly nodded. The rain helped them destroy everything. Ngozi looked angry again. Chief Boko enjoys humiliating people. Mama Grace did not respond. She slowly stood up, holding her back from pain. Years of carrying heavy baskets had bent her body slightly forward, but she still refused to complain. The market road was almost empty now. Only puddles, scattered leaves, and muddy footprints remained. As Ton started the motorcycle engine, he noticed Mama Grace staring silently toward the dark road again. You are still thinking about what happened? Mama Grace looked down. No. Then what is it? For a moment she said nothing. Then she spoke softly. Today feels strange. Ngozi crossed her arms. Because those wicked people embarrassed you. Mama Grace slowly shook her head. No. It feels like something is coming. The thunder above them became louder. Ton exchanged glances with Ngozi before helping Mama Grace onto the motorcycle carefully. The old woman held the baskets tightly as they drove away from the market through the rain-covered streets of Enugu. Small shops passed beside them. Children played barefoot in muddy water. Street lights flickered weakly above broken roads. Life continued normally around them. But far away, something had already begun moving toward the city. Something powerful. Something that would soon change everything. Mama Grace lived in a small old house at the edge of a crowded neighborhood behind the main road. The walls were cracked. The roof leaked during heavy rain. Half of the wooden fence had collapsed months earlier, but there was no money to repair it. Still, the small compound remained clean. Flowers grew inside old paint buckets near the entrance. A faded prayer calendar hung beside the front door. And near the window sat several framed photographs carefully wrapped in plastic to protect them from dust. Ton helped carry the vegetable baskets inside. You should rest tomorrow, he said. Mama Grace smiled while removing her wet scarf. If I rest, hunger will not rest with me. Ton laughed softly despite himself. You always say that. Because it is true. Ngozi stepped inside and looked around the leaking roof. Did the landlord repair anything? Mama Grace shook her head. He said maybe next month. Rainwater dripped slowly into a bucket near the kitchen corner. Ton clenched his jaw. How can somebody allow an old woman to live like this? Mama Grace touched his arm gently. Do not be angry for me. But you deserve better. She smiled faintly. One day, maybe. After helping arrange the baskets, Ton prepared to leave. Before stepping outside, he paused near the photographs hanging beside the wall. One picture showed a much younger Mama Grace standing beside a teenage boy wearing a school uniform. The boy smiled proudly while holding several books against his chest. Ton looked closely. That is David. Mama Grace's tired eyes softened immediately. Yes. He looked serious even then. Mama Grace laughed quietly for the first time that day. He always wanted to protect people. Ton studied the photo carefully. You really miss him? Mama Grace's smile faded slowly. Every day. The room became silent except for the rain hitting the roof. Ton spoke carefully. When was the last time you saw him? Mama Grace sat down slowly on the small wooden chair near the wall. Almost 5 years. Ngozi looked surprised. 5 years. Mama Grace nodded. He came home briefly before another military deployment. And since then, he calls when he can. Ton frowned slightly. That is too long. Mama Grace looked toward the rain outside. The country kept sending him far away. Her voice carried both pride and pain together. Ton finally left after promising to return the next morning. Ngozi also went home soon afterward. Then Mama Grace was alone again. The small house felt colder without voices inside it. She slowly removed the damaged vegetables from the baskets and placed them aside. Every movement showed exhaustion. After cleaning the floor carefully, she walked toward the framed photographs again. Her fingers gently touched David's picture. You promised you would come home safely, she whispered. Another photograph beside it showed David wearing military training clothes many years earlier. His face looked younger but determined. Mama Grace stared at the picture for a long time. Then slowly, memories returned. Years earlier. Before the military. Before the loneliness. Before the suffering became her daily life. David had been a thin, quiet boy with bright eyes and stubborn determination. Their life had always been difficult. Mama Grace sold vegetables even back then, carrying baskets on her head from village farms to local markets every morning before sunrise. David often followed her as a child. While other children played football after school, he helped arrange tomatoes and peppers under the hot sun. Sometimes customers mocked him. Market boy. Poor woman's son. Vegetable carrier. But David never fought them. He simply worked harder. One afternoon many years ago, Mama Grace returned home crying after a landlord threatened to throw them out over unpaid rent. David sat beside her silently while she wiped tears with her wrapper. Then the young boy spoke quietly. Mama. She looked at him. One day, I will change everything. Mama Grace smiled sadly. You are still a child. But David shook his head seriously. I mean it. How? I will join the army. Mama Grace immediately frowned. No. Why? Because soldiers die. David looked down at his hands. But soldiers also protect people. You can protect people another way. David remained silent for several seconds before speaking again. When bad men hurt weak people, somebody must stop them. Mama Grace still remembered the way his eyes looked that day. Focused. Fearless. Determined beyond his age. As years passed, David grew stronger and more disciplined than other boys around him. While many youths joined gangs or street crime, he stayed away from trouble. Teachers respected him. Neighbors trusted him. But poverty followed them everywhere. There were nights without food. Days without electricity. Months when Mama Grace sold vegetables from morning until midnight just to pay school fees. Sometimes she secretly skipped meals so David could eat. But she never told him. One evening during secondary school, David returned home early and found Mama Grace dizzy from hunger while cooking. He froze immediately. Mama. She quickly forced a smile. I am alright. But David opened the pot and saw only watery soup inside. No meat. No fish. Almost nothing. That night he sat outside the house quietly for hours. The next morning he disappeared before sunrise. Mama Grace became worried until he returned late afternoon carrying cement dust on his clothes. Where were you? I worked at a construction site. Mama Grace stared at him in shock. You are supposed to be in school. I finished classes early. Then he placed folded money into her hand. Use this for food. Mama Grace's eyes filled immediately. No. Keep it. But David closed her fingers around the money. You already suffer too much. From that day, he worked secretly after school whenever possible. Construction sites. Car washing. Loading trucks. Anything legal that brought extra money. Yet despite everything, he remained one of the best students in school. People began noticing him. Then one afternoon, military recruiters visited the local government field. Young men gathered everywhere hoping for opportunity. David stood among them silently. Mama Grace arrived later after hearing rumors from neighbors. She pushed through the crowd desperately until she found him. No. David turned slowly. Mama. You cannot do this. His face remained calm. This is my chance. To die. To live with purpose. Mama Grace grabbed his hand tightly. You are all I have. David's eyes softened. And you are the reason I must do this. That day they argued until sunset. But deep inside, Mama Grace already knew. Nothing would stop her son once he made up his mind. Months later, David left for military training. The day he departed remained burned into Mama Grace's memory forever. Old buses filled with recruits waited beside the dusty road. Families cried everywhere. Mothers hugged sons tightly. Some fathers tried hiding tears. David stood in simple clothes carrying one small bag. Before entering the bus, he hugged Mama Grace carefully. She held him for a long time. Promise me something. What is it, Mama? No matter how far you go, come back alive. David smiled softly. I will. Then he added something she never forgot. One day nobody would disrespect you again. Back in the present, Mama Grace slowly wiped tears from her face. Rain still fell outside. She looked again at the photograph on the wall. You kept your promise to the country, she whispered quietly. Then her voice weakened. But you still have not come home. Far away from Enugu. Military convoy lights moved through the dark highway. Inside the lead vehicle, Colonel David Okoro remained silent while watching the viral video on his phone again. His mother kneeling in mud. Her vegetables scattered. People laughing around her. The video ended. But David continued staring at the black screen afterward. One younger soldier sitting nearby shifted uncomfortably. Sir. David did not answer. The soldier hesitated. We can arrive in Enugu before morning if traffic stays clear. Still silence. Then David finally spoke quietly. Who uploaded the video? We traced the account name. A local motorcycle rider. David nodded slowly. His jaw tightened. Outside, thunder shook the highway. And the convoy continued moving through the night toward Enugu. Morning came slowly to Enugu after a long night of heavy rain. The streets remained wet and muddy. Small gutters overflowed onto the roads while traders pushed wheelbarrows carefully through pools of dirty water. The sky looked grey and tired, but the market was already awake again. Noise returned before sunrise. Women shouted prices. Bus conductors screamed for passengers. Metal shop doors opened loudly. Smoke from roasted corn and roadside food rose into the cold morning air. Life continued like nothing had happened. But people were still talking about yesterday. Especially the video. Small groups of traders gathered near stores whispering quietly while checking their phones. Did you watch it? Yes. That old woman did not deserve that. They say the video is spreading fast. Some lowered their voices immediately whenever Chief Boko supporters passed nearby. Nobody wanted trouble. Fear controlled the market more than laws did. At the center of the market stood the largest building in the area. Boko Plaza. A modern 3-story structure painted bright cream and gold. Expensive cars filled the parking area outside. Security guards stood at the entrance carrying walkie-talkies and batons. While poor traders struggled in mud outside, Chief Boko sat inside an air-conditioned office drinking imported coffee. Large framed photographs covered the walls behind him. Pictures with politicians. Pictures with wealthy businessmen. Pictures with police officers and government officials. Power. Influence. Control. Chief Boko enjoyed surrounding himself with reminders that nobody could challenge him. A television played morning news quietly in the background while two market union officers stood nervously in front of his desk. One of them cleared his throat carefully. "Chief, people are talking about the video." Chief Boko did not look worried. "Let them talk. The comments online are increasing." He waved dismissively. "Poor people always complain online because they are powerless in real life." The second officer shifted uneasily. "Some traders are beginning to sympathize with the old woman." Chief Boko finally looked up. And the men exchanged glances. "The situation may affect your image before the local elections." Chief Boko laughed loudly. "My image?" He leaned back confidently in his chair. "Do you know how many politicians owe me favors?" Nobody answered. He continued calmly. "This market runs because I allow it to run. Every truck entering this place pays me. Every trader pays me. Even local police officers eat from this market because of me." He pointed toward the window overlooking the busy market outside. "Without my control, this entire place collapses." The officers nodded quickly. Chief Boko's smile slowly faded. "But I do not like unnecessary noise." He picked up his phone and replayed part of the viral video. Mama Grace kneeling in mud. Anita laughing. Nearby traders watching silently. Chief Boko's eyes narrowed slightly. "Who recorded this?" "We are still investigating." "Find out." "Yes, Chief." He turned the phone off and stood up slowly. "And make sure people remember who owns this market." The officers immediately nodded again before leaving the office. Chief Boko walked toward the large window overlooking the crowded market below. People looked tiny from up there. Small. Weak. Easy to control. And he liked it that way. Meanwhile, several streets away, Mama Grace slowly prepared for another day of work. Her small room smelled of damp walls and boiled tea. She moved carefully because her back still hurt from kneeling in mud the previous day. The remaining vegetables from yesterday sat in baskets near the kitchen corner. Many were already damaged from rainwater. Mama Grace examined them quietly. She separated spoiled tomatoes into one bucket and placed the good ones carefully aside. There were not many left. A knock sounded on the door. Before she could answer, Ton stepped inside carrying bread and hot tea in nylon bags. "Mama Grace." She smiled softly. "You came early." Ton placed the food on the table. "You need to eat first today. You should not spend your money on me." "I did not spend much." Mama Grace knew he was lying. Ton barely earned enough for himself driving passengers around the city every day. Yet he still found ways to help her. She slowly sat down. "You are a good young man." Ton shrugged awkwardly. "My mother raised me properly." As Mama Grace drank tea quietly, Ton checked his phone again. The video continued spreading rapidly online. Thousands of views. Hundreds of angry comments. People from different cities were reposting it. Some demanded action against Chief Boko. Others insulted the market leadership openly. Ton looked surprised. "It is becoming bigger." Mama Grace frowned slightly. "What is becoming bigger?" "The video." She sighed immediately. "I do not want trouble." "You did nothing wrong." "Sometimes trouble does not need a reason." Ton looked at her carefully. "Do you know people are supporting you online?" Mama Grace shook her head. "I do not understand those internet things." "They are angry because of how you were treated." Mama Grace lowered her eyes. "Anger disappears quickly." Then after a short silence, she added quietly, "But hunger stays." Ton had no answer again. Later that morning, the market became more crowded than usual. Rumors moved fast through every section. Some traders avoided discussing the video openly. Others spoke carefully behind stalls. A few even greeted Mama Grace more respectfully than before. But fear still remained stronger than sympathy. Nobody wanted Chief Boko's attention. Mama Grace returned to her usual corner near the drainage path. The muddy ground had not dried from yesterday's rain. She cleaned the area quietly before arranging her remaining vegetables. Ngozi arrived carrying a basin of peppers on her head. "You should have stayed home today." Mama Grace smiled weakly. "And eat what?" Ngozi sighed. "You are stubborn." Life trained me to be stubborn. Nearby traders laughed softly at the comment. For a brief moment the atmosphere felt lighter. Then suddenly silence spread through part of the market. People began moving aside quickly. Chief Boko's guards were approaching again. 4 large men walked through the market aggressively pushing people aside. Behind them came Anita wearing sunglasses and expensive jewelry despite the muddy roads. She looked annoyed already. One of the guards shouted loudly. Everybody cleared the way. Traders immediately stepped back. Mama Grace kept arranging vegetables quietly without looking up. Anita noticed her immediately. She came back. One guard laughed. These poor people never learn. Chief Boko appeared behind them moments later wearing another expensive outfit. This time he did not even pretend to smile. He walked directly toward Mama Grace's stall while people watched nervously. Mama Grace. She slowly stood. Good morning, Chief. Chief Boko removed his sunglasses. You enjoy attracting attention. I do not understand. He pulled out his phone and showed her the viral video. You caused embarrassment for this market. Mama Grace stared at the ground. I did not ask anyone to record me. But it happened under my leadership. Nearby traders remained silent. Chief Boko stepped closer. You want people online insulting me because of your poverty? Mama Grace's voice remained soft. I only came to sell vegetables. Anita rolled her eyes. She acts innocent. Then she looked around loudly enough for others to hear. Maybe she planned everything for sympathy. A few nervous laughs followed. Mama Grace said nothing. Chief Boko suddenly kicked one of the vegetable baskets hard. Tomatoes rolled across the muddy ground again. Gas spread through nearby traders. Turned, standing farther down the road beside his motorcycle, immediately froze when he saw what was happening. Chief Boko pointed aggressively at Mama Grace. I warned you already. Mama Grace bent down slowly to gather the tomatoes again. Her hands trembled. Anita crossed her arms proudly. People like her enjoy acting like victims. Then something unexpected happened. An older trader stepped forward from the crowd. His name was Papa Akena, one of the oldest sellers in the market. He looked directly at Chief Boko. That is enough. Silence fell instantly. Several traders looked terrified. Nobody challenged Chief Boko publicly. Ever. Chief Boko turned slowly. What did you say? Papa Akena swallowed carefully but remained standing. I said that is enough. She is an old woman. The guards immediately moved closer threateningly. Anita laughed in disbelief. Now old fools are becoming brave. Chief Boko stared coldly at Papa Akena. Do you want problems? The old trader hesitated. Fear showed clearly in his eyes now. But he still spoke. We all know what is happening in this market. Nearby traders looked down immediately. Nobody wanted to hear the next part. Chief Boko's face darkened. What are you accusing me of? Papa Akena's breathing became heavier. Illegal taxes. Threats. Taking money from widows. The entire market became silent. Even the nearby music from shops suddenly seemed distant. Chief Boko slowly smiled. But the smile looked dangerous. You have lived too long. The guards grabbed Papa Akena roughly before anyone could react. Women screamed nearby. Mama Grace quickly stood. Please leave him alone. Chief Boko ignored her. The guards dragged the old trader toward the center road while he struggled weakly. Let me go. Chief Boko spoke loudly for everyone to hear. This is what happens when people disrespect authority. Fear spread across every face nearby. No one moved. No one helped. Ton clenched his fist beside his motorcycle. His heart pounded with anger. But he also knew something important. Chief Boko controlled local police. Anybody who fought back disappeared from the market permanently. Sometimes worse. Mama Grace suddenly stepped forward again despite her fear. Chief, please. Chief Boko looked at her with irritation. You again. He is old. That is not my concern. Mama Grace's voice shook slightly. Mercy cost nothing. For a second, Chief Boko stared at her silently. Then he laughed. You poor people always talk about mercy because you have no power. He pointed toward the muddy ground. But power is what controls the world. Then he ordered the guards again. Take him away. As the guards dragged Papa Ikena further through the market, fear spread like sickness among the traders. Nobody spoke. Nobody resisted. And above them all, dark clouds slowly gathered once again over Enugu. The convoy moved through the wet highway at high speed. Military trucks cut through the morning fog while sirens echoed across the road. Smaller vehicles quickly moved aside whenever they saw the armed convoy approaching. Some drivers stopped completely, watching with curiosity as the long line of military vehicles passed. Inside the lead vehicle, Colonel David Okoro sat silently beside the window. His sharp military uniform looked perfect despite the long journey. Medals rested neatly on his chest. His posture remained straight and disciplined like every trained officer under his command. But his eyes were troubled. The viral video still played repeatedly in his mind. His mother kneeling in mud. Her vegetables scattered on the ground. People laughing around her. Every time he remembered it, anger rose deeper inside him. Across from him sat Major Su, one of his closest officers. Unlike David, Su had learned to speak openly around him after years of dangerous military operations together. He studied David carefully for several moments before finally speaking. "You have not slept since we left Maiduguri." David kept looking outside. "I am not tired." Major Su sighed quietly. "That is a lie." David finally glanced toward him briefly. "You watched the video?" "Yes." "What did you feel?" Su hesitated carefully. "Anger." David nodded once. That was only 2 minutes of her life. Silence filled the vehicle again. Outside, rainwater sprayed across the windows as the convoy continued south toward Enugu. Several younger soldiers sitting further back remained unusually quiet. They had never seen Colonel David this tense before. To them, he was famous for staying calm during attacks. Calm during ambushes. Calm during gunfire. But now his silence felt heavier than shouting. One young lieutenant cleared his throat nervously. "Sir." David looked at him. "Speak." "We should reach Enugu by afternoon if the roads remain clear." David nodded. "Good." The lieutenant hesitated again. "Sir, if I may ask something." David waited. "Why did your mother never leave the market walk?" The vehicle became quiet immediately. Major Su glanced toward the young officer warningly. But David answered calmly. "Because she hates depending on people." The young lieutenant listened carefully. "When my father died, she sold vegetables morning and night to raise me alone. Sometimes she worked even when sick." David's voice remained steady, but emotion slowly entered it. "She believed begging destroys dignity." The lieutenant lowered his eyes respectfully. "My mother is the same." David nodded slightly. "In our country, mothers carry suffering silently." No one spoke after that. The convoy continued moving. Hours later, they stopped briefly at a military checkpoint outside a small town. Armed soldiers saluted immediately when they recognized Colonel David. "Welcome, sir." David stepped out of the vehicle slowly. The rain had finally stopped, but the sky remained dark and heavy. Roadside traders stood nearby selling roasted corn, fruits, bottled drinks, and bread to travelers. Some civilians stared curiously at the military convoy. Others quickly moved aside nervously. David walked a short distance from the vehicles while speaking quietly into his phone. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Major Sul approached him carefully. Still unreachable. David nodded once. "My mother rarely charges her phone fully. She probably does not even know how serious the video has become." David's jaw tightened. "That is what worries me." At that same moment in Enugu, Mama Grace sat quietly beside her small stall while tension filled the market. After Chief Boko's guards dragged Papa Ikena away earlier that morning, fear spread everywhere. Traders avoided eye contact. Conversations became whispers. Nobody wanted to attract attention anymore. Even Anita and the guards had finally left after warning everyone against discussing the viral video again. But the damage was already done. The market no longer felt normal. Mama Grace stared silently at the few vegetables remaining in her basket. Business was poor. Most customers hurried past nervously. Ngozi sat beside her holding a bottle of water. "I heard they locked Papa Ikena inside the union office." Mama Grace looked troubled immediately. "He is too old for this stress. Chief Boko wants to scare everybody." Mama Grace sighed. "And it is working." Nearby, Ton leaned against his motorcycle checking his phone repeatedly. The viral video had exploded overnight. Large social media pages across Nigeria were reposting it now. Thousands of comments flooded every platform. Many people demanded punishment for the market chairman. Others asked for help locating the old woman in the video. Some users even claimed politicians were already discussing it privately. Ton shook his head in disbelief. This thing is becoming national news. Ngozi looked worried. That is dangerous. For who? For everybody. Mama Grace overheard them and quietly spoke. I do not want fighting because of me. Ton walked closer. This is no longer only about you. Mama Grace frowned slightly. What does that mean? Ton showed her his phone screen. People online had started posting side-by-side pictures. One image showed Mama Grace crying in the mud. The second image showed Colonel David Okoro during a military ceremony beside government officials. The caption underneath read, "Is this the son of the woman in the viral market video?" Mama Grace's eyes widened slightly. She looked away immediately. No. Ton stared carefully at her. What? She lowered her voice. David does not like public attention. Ngozi looked confused. Wait, this officer is really your son? Mama Grace remained silent for several seconds. Then she nodded slowly. Ngozi covered her mouth in shock. My God. Ton looked equally stunned. You never told us he was this important. Mama Grace's tired face became uneasy. He serves the country. That is enough. Ngozi leaned closer urgently. Does Chief Boko know? Mama Grace shook her head immediately. And he must not know? Ton frowned. Why? Because power creates dangerous enemies. Before anybody could respond, shouting suddenly erupted further inside the market. People began moving quickly toward the central road. What happened? Ngozi asked nervously. A young trader came running toward them. Union officers are destroying stores again. Fear immediately spread across nearby sellers. Chief Boko often ordered random demolitions whenever he wanted to punish traders or force extra payments. Mama Grace slowly stood despite her aching body. Women hurried past carrying baskets on their heads. Men argued loudly. Children cried while goods scattered across muddy ground. The atmosphere turned chaotic fast. Ton grabbed his motorcycle keys. I will go check. But before he could leave, another trader shouted loudly from down the road. Military convoy. Everything stopped. People turned toward the main entrance road instinctively. Far in the distance, faint sirens echoed through the city traffic. Ngozi looked confused. Military. Several traders exchanged nervous glances. In Nigeria, military presence inside civilian markets usually meant serious trouble. The sirens grew louder. Vehicles moved aside outside the market road. People began whispering anxiously. Chief Boko's union officer suddenly looked uncertain for the first time all day. Mama Grace felt her chest tighten strangely. Her hands became cold. Ton stared toward the entrance road. Several dark military vehicles slowly appeared through traffic. Large. Armed. Powerful. Market noise faded little by little as fear spread. Even the aggressive union officer stepped backward cautiously. The convoy had not even entered fully yet, but tension already covered the entire market. Inside the lead vehicle, Colonel David stared ahead silently. The market entrance was finally visible. Major Sue studied him carefully. You want us to enter directly? David's eyes remained fixed ahead. Yes. You believe the chairman is still inside? I believe men like him never expect consequences. The convoy slowed slightly as civilians rushed away from the road. Soldiers adjusted their weapons inside the vehicles. The younger lieutenant looked outside nervously. People are already panicking. David's expression did not change. They should. Back inside the market, Chief Boko stood outside Boko Plaza arguing angrily with one of his officers when he heard the sirens. He frowned immediately. What is happening? The officer looked nervous. Military convoy approaching the market, sir. Chief Boko scoffed dismissively. Probably passing through. But then more sirens echoed closer. Louder this time. Stronger. Anita stepped outside the building holding her phone. Father, people online are saying soldiers are coming because of the video. Chief Boko laughed harshly. Social media fools talk too much. Still, something inside him began to feel uneasy. The convoy finally turned fully toward the market entrance. And for the first time that day, silence spread across the entire market. The entire market froze. Traders stopped shouting prices. Customers stopped walking. Even the noisy bus conductors outside the gate became silent as the military convoy slowly entered through the muddy road. The heavy tires rolled through puddles while armed soldiers watched both sides carefully from inside the vehicles. Sirens slowly faded, leaving only the sound of engines moving through the crowded market. Fear spread immediately. Women grabbed their children. Young boys stepped backward from the road. Several traders quickly closed their stalls halfway, afraid trouble was coming. Nobody understood why soldiers had arrived. But everybody knew one thing. This was not normal. Near the center of the market, Chief Boko stood completely still beside Boko Plaza while his guards exchanged nervous looks. Anita lowered her sunglasses slowly. Father. Chief Boko forced himself to remain calm. Relax. But his voice no longer sounded confident. The convoy continued deeper into the market until the lead vehicle finally stopped near the muddy drainage path where Mama Grace sold vegetables every day. Everything became silent. People watched from every direction. Some stood on tables. Others peered from behind stalls. Phones quietly appeared in many hands as people began recording. Then the door of the lead military vehicle opened. A tall officer stepped out slowly. His boots touched the muddy road first. Then his full military uniform appeared. Decorated medals. Sharp posture. Cold eyes. Authority. The entire atmosphere changed immediately. Even before people recognized him, they could already feel his presence. Major Sul and several armed soldiers stepped out behind him. The market became so quiet that rainwater dripping from rooftops could be heard clearly. Colonel David Okoro removed his glove slowly while looking around the market. His eyes moved carefully across the muddy road. The broken stalls. The frightened traders. The scattered vegetables still lying near the drainage. Then finally, he saw her. Mama Grace stood frozen beside her small wooden table. For a moment, neither of them moved. The years disappeared from David's face instantly. He no longer looked like a feared military officer. He looked like a son. A son finally seeing his mother again after too many years apart. Mama Grace's lips trembled. David. Her voice barely came out. The soldiers around him remained still as David slowly walked forward through the mud toward her. People moved aside immediately. Nobody dared block his path. Chief Boko stared in disbelief. Anita's face lost all color. David stopped directly in front of Mama Grace. Up close, he could see everything clearly now. The tired eyes. The worn clothes. The weak hands. The exhaustion hidden behind her gentle smile. And something inside him broke quietly. Without caring about the mud beneath him, Colonel David Okoro slowly knelt before his mother. Gasps spread across the market. Some traders covered their mouths in shock. Others stared with wide eyes. A high-ranking military officer kneeling in mud before an old vegetable seller. Nobody expected it. David gently held his mother's shaking hands. Mama. Tears filled Mama Grace's eyes immediately. You came. David lowered his head briefly. I am sorry I came late. The market remained completely silent. Even the guard standing beside Chief Boko looked uncomfortable now. Mama Grace touched David's face carefully like she was making sure he was truly there. You are alive? David smiled faintly for the first time. Yes. Tears rolled down Mama Grace's cheeks. For years she had prayed every night for this moment. Every night fearing soldiers would someday arrive at her house carrying bad news instead. But now her son stood before her alive and strong. David slowly stood again and looked around the market. His expression changed immediately. The warmth disappeared from his face. Now he looked like a commander again. Cold. Focused. Dangerous. His eyes stopped on the scattered tomatoes near the gutter. Then the damaged wooden table. Then finally, Chief Boko. The market chairman forced a smile and stepped forward carefully. Colonel David, welcome to our market. David stared at him silently. Chief Boko extended his hand nervously. I am Chief Boko, chairman of this market union. David did not shake the hand. An uncomfortable silence followed. Several soldiers behind David remained expressionless, but their eyes stayed alert. Chief Boko slowly lowered his hand. We did not know Mama Grace was your mother. David finally spoke. But you knew she was an old woman. The sentence landed heavily. Nobody moved. Chief Boko forced a laugh. There seems to be misunderstanding online. David took one slow step toward him. My mother was humiliated publicly. No, Colonel. The video only showed part of. David cut him off calmly. I watched enough. Chief Boko's confidence weakened further. You must understand market discipline is necessary sometimes. David's eyes hardened. Discipline. He pointed toward the muddy drainage. You call this discipline? Nobody spoke. Anita suddenly stepped forward nervously. We did not mean serious harm. David looked at her once. That single look made her step backward immediately. Fear finally entered her face fully. Mama Grace quietly touched David's arm. Please. He glanced at her. Do not create violence here. David remained silent. His breathing stayed controlled, but everyone around him could feel the tension growing. Major Sue stepped closer carefully. Sir. David nodded slightly. The soldiers immediately spread through parts of the market calmly but strategically. People watched anxiously. Chief Boko noticed it too. What exactly is happening here? David looked directly into his eyes. I came to see my mother. Chief Boko forced another weak smile. And now you have seen her. David's voice became quieter. Yes. That frightened Chief Boko even more. Because calm anger felt more dangerous than shouting. One of the market union officers hurried toward Chief Boko whispering nervously into his ear. Sir, many traders are gathering behind. Chief Boko glanced around. It was true. People were no longer hiding. Traders slowly gathered nearby watching everything openly now. Fear still existed. But something else had begun appearing too. Hope. For the first time in years, Chief Boko no longer looked untouchable. Papa Ekena suddenly appeared at the edge of the crowd supported by two younger traders. His shirt looked dirty and torn from earlier. Mama Grace gasped softly. They released him. Chief Boko turned angrily toward his officers. Who allowed him here? But nobody answered. Because the atmosphere had already changed. People were no longer looking at Chief Boko the same way. Papa Ekena slowly stepped forward despite his weak condition. He looked directly at David. You are her son. David nodded respectfully. Yes, sir. The old trader smiled painfully. Your mother is a good woman. David glanced at Mama Grace again. I know. Papa Ekena pointed weakly toward Chief Boko. That man has destroyed many lives here. Several traders lowered their eyes nervously. Others quietly nodded. Chief Boko immediately shouted. Be careful what you say. But his voice no longer carried the same power. David watched everything silently. Listening. Observing. Understanding. Then one woman suddenly stepped out from the crowd crying. She collects food for hungry children. Another trader raised his voice. She pays fees for widows when they cannot afford market tax. Another shouted from farther back. She helped bury my sister. More voices followed quickly now. She gives people vegetables for free. She helped my daughter when she was sick. She never insults anybody. The market slowly exploded with emotion. Years of silence began breaking apart. Mama Grace looked overwhelmed. No, please. But people continued speaking. Because fear was finally weakening. And once fear weakens, truth becomes louder. Chief Boko realized the situation was slipping away fast. He pointed angrily toward the crowd. All of you should keep quiet. Nobody listened. Anita grabbed her father's arm nervously. Father, let us leave. But Chief Boko's pride refused. He stepped toward David again, trying one last time to regain control. Colonel, whatever misunderstanding exists here can be resolved privately. David looked at him coldly. Privately. Yes. David slowly removed his cap. Then he spoke clearly enough for the entire market to hear. My mother suffered publicly. Silence returned instantly. David's next words came slowly. So we will handle this publicly. Fear crossed Chief Boko's face completely now. Real fear. For the first time in many years, the powerful chairman realized something terrifying. He was no longer the most powerful man in the market. The silence inside the market felt heavy after David's words. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the wind seemed to disappear between the crowded stores and muddy roads. Chief Boko stood frozen while sweat slowly formed across his forehead despite the cool weather. Around him, his guards looked uncertain for the first time in years. They were used to frightening ordinary traders. Not trained soldiers. Not military officers. And definitely not a colonel whose face now looked completely unreadable. David slowly placed his military cap back onto his head and turned toward Major Sewell. Secure the area. Yes, sir. Within seconds, soldiers calmly spread across different sections of the market. They did not point weapons at civilians, but their presence alone changed everything. People stepped aside immediately. Some traders climbed onto tables trying to see better. Others continued recording videos secretly with shaking hands. News was already spreading beyond the market. Military convoy in Enugu market. Army officer confronts market chairman. The viral old woman is his mother. Phones buzzed everywhere. Meanwhile, Mama Grace stood quietly beside her damaged stall looking deeply uncomfortable with all the attention. She gently touched David's arm again. My son. David looked down at her immediately. This is too much. His face softened slightly. You should have called me. Mama Grace lowered her eyes. You already carry enough burdens. David stared at her worn hands silently. Hands hardened by years of labor. Hands that sacrificed everything for him. And yet she still worried about becoming a burden. That hurt him more than the video itself. Nearby, Chief Boko finally forced himself to speak again. Colonel David, perhaps we should continue this conversation inside my office. David turned slowly. Why? It is more comfortable. David looked around the muddy market. My mother stood here in the rain while your people humiliated her. Chief Boko swallowed carefully. That was not my intention. David took one step closer. Then what was your intention? Chief Boko hesitated. No answer came. Because there was none. At that moment, another voice suddenly rose from the crowd. He collects illegal money from us. The entire market turned immediately. A young trader stood trembling near the back. Fear filled his face, but he continued anyway. He forces widows to pay double taxes. Another woman spoke loudly. My shop was destroyed because I could not pay him. More voices followed quickly. He seized my goods last year. He takes money from transport drivers. He threatens everybody. The fear that had controlled the market for years was finally cracking apart. Chief Boko pointed angrily toward the crowd. Shut up. But now his voice sounded desperate instead of powerful. Anita looked horrified as more traders stepped forward speaking openly. The market had become a flood of hidden anger. Years of suffering. Years of silence. Years of fear. Now pouring out all at once. Major Sewell walked back toward David holding a small notebook. Sir. David glanced toward him. One of the union workers is willing to speak. Chief Boko immediately snapped toward his officers. Who? A nervous young man slowly emerged from behind the crowd. His name was Emeka. One of the market accountants. Chief Boko's eyes widened angrily. You? Emeka avoided eye contact. For years he had handled market payment records quietly under orders. He knew too much. And everyone knew it. David looked at him calmly. What do you want to say? Emeka swallowed hard. Sir, many records were hidden. Chief Boko shouted immediately. He is lying. But Emeka continued shakily. Illegal collections. Missing development funds. Payments to local officials. Gas spread through nearby traders. Chief Boko stepped forward furiously. You fool. Two soldiers immediately blocked his path. The market chairman froze again. David kept his eyes on Emeka. Do you have proof? Emeka nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Where? In the union office. Chief Boko's breathing became heavier. Anita grabbed his arm tightly. Father. For the first time, fear completely replaced arrogance on her face. David remained calm. Bring the records. Major Sewell signaled two soldiers immediately. They moved toward Boko Plaza with Emeka leading them. Chief Boko suddenly lost control. You cannot enter my office without permission. David finally looked directly into his eyes again. Watch me. The sentence sent chills through the crowd. Even Mama Grace looked worried now. She had never seen this side of her son before. Cold. Sharp. Completely controlled. Nearby traders whispered among themselves nervously. Some looked excited. Others looked terrified about what might happen next. Because everybody knew something important. If Chief Boko truly fell today, the entire market power structure would collapse with him. And many dangerous people were connected to him. Minutes later, soldiers returned carrying boxes of documents, notebooks, and files from the union office. People stretched their necks trying to see. Major Su opened one file quickly. His expression darkened almost immediately. Sir, these numbers do not match official market reports. Another soldier handed him additional papers. Hidden payment list. Chief Boko's face became pale. David took one document and examined it silently. Large amounts of money. Fake signatures. Unauthorized taxes. Missing government funds. Extortion payments. The corruption was everywhere. David closed the file slowly. How long? Emeka answered quietly. Almost 7 years. Mama spread through the market. 7 years. 7 years of stolen money. 7 years of intimidation. 7 years of fear. One elderly woman suddenly burst into tears. My husband died trying to pay those taxes. Another trader shook his head angrily. My children left school because of debt. The emotional atmosphere intensified quickly. Chief Boko realized the situation was collapsing completely. He looked toward David desperately. Colonel, listen to me carefully. Powerful people are involved in this. David said nothing. You do not understand the situation. David's eyes remained cold. No. You do not understand your situation. That answer silenced him immediately. At the edge of the crowd, Ton stood holding his phone tightly. His heart still struggled to believe everything happening around him. Yesterday Mama Grace sat alone in mud while people mocked her. Today military soldiers surrounded the same market while powerful men trembled. Life could change fast. Very fast. Ngozi moved beside him whispering nervously. Do you think they will arrest Chief Boko? Ton stared ahead. I think worse is coming. Back near the center road, Major Soul approached David again. Sir, local police have arrived outside the market. Several traders immediately looked nervous. Police officers in the area were known for protecting Chief Boko for years. 3 police vehicles slowly appeared near the entrance moments later. Armed officers stepped out carefully. Their leader, Superintendent Ibrahim, walked forward trying to appear confident. But once he saw the military convoy and Colonel David standing there, his expression changed slightly. Colonel. David nodded once. Superintendent. Ibrahim glanced around the tense market. We received reports of disturbance. Chief Boko immediately rushed forward. Officer, thank God you are here. But Ibrahim noticed the soldiers surrounding the area and instantly understood something serious was happening. Chief Boko lowered his voice urgently. You must control this situation. Ibrahim looked toward David. Sir. David handed him one of the financial documents calmly. The police superintendent read several lines. His face slowly tightened. Then he opened another page. And another. When he finally looked up again, his entire attitude had changed. He turned slowly toward Chief Boko. What is this? Chief Boko stammered slightly. These are misunderstandings. Ibrahim's voice hardened. Missing government revenue. Chief Boko remained silent. Illegal collections. Still silence. The police superintendent looked genuinely disturbed now. Because the evidence was overwhelming. And because too many witnesses stood around them watching everything. There was no easy way to hide this anymore. Anita stepped closer nervously. My father can explain everything. But nobody listened. The crowd had completely turned now. Fear no longer controlled the market. Truth did. Mama Grace watched the chaos around her quietly. Then she looked at her son. Despite the uniform, medals, soldiers, and authority surrounding him, she still saw the same boy who once carried vegetables beside her after school. The same boy who promised to protect her one day. And now that promise had finally returned to the market with military convoys behind it. Rain clouds gathered again above the market, but nobody paid attention anymore. All eyes remained fixed on Chief Boko. The once powerful chairman stood surrounded by soldiers, police officers, angry traders, and frightened union workers. Just hours earlier, people avoided even looking directly at him. Now nobody feared him the same way. The balance of power had shifted completely. Superintendent Ibrahim continued examining the financial documents while tension spread through the market like fire. "These records are serious," he said finally. Chief Boko forced himself to speak calmly. "Officer, you know me. We have worked together for years." Ibrahim slowly looked up. "That is exactly why this situation disappoints me." Chief Boko's face tightened. One of his guards stepped closer nervously. "Chief." But Chief Boko raised his hand sharply, stopping him. He could already see what was happening. The police were distancing themselves. People who once benefited from his power were beginning to protect themselves first. That was how power worked. Loyalty disappeared when fear disappeared. Anita grabbed her father's arm again. "We should leave." But there was nowhere to go. The market exits were already controlled by soldiers. Meanwhile, more traders continued stepping forward with complaints. A middle-aged woman pointed angrily toward Chief Boko. "He seized my shop after my husband died." Another man raised his voice. "They forced transport workers to pay illegal fees every week." An older widow began crying openly. "I borrowed money for taxes until I lost my home." The emotional pressure inside the market kept growing stronger. Some traders shouted angrily now. Others cursed openly. Years of frustration exploded into the open. Mama Grace watched quietly, disturbed by the growing tension. She slowly touched David's arm again. "My son." David turned immediately. Do not let violence happen." David looked around carefully. People were emotional. Angry crowds could become dangerous quickly. He nodded once toward Major Sue. "Keep civilians separated." "Yes, sir." Soldiers immediately moved calmly between groups of traders, preventing chaos from spreading further. Their discipline slowly stabilized the situation. Still, fear remained visible on Chief Boko's face. For the first time in many years, he looked like an ordinary man. A vulnerable man. A man realizing his protection was disappearing. Superintendent Ibrahim closed the investigation file slowly. "Chief Boko." The chairman looked up immediately. "You will need to come with us for questioning." The market exploded with noise. Some traders cheered loudly. Others gasped in shock. Several women began clapping emotionally. Anita looked horrified. "No. My father has done nothing." Chief Boko quickly raised his voice. "You cannot arrest me publicly like this." Ibrahim's expression remained firm. "The evidence speaks for itself." Chief Boko pointed angrily toward David. "This is abuse of military influence." David finally spoke again. "My mother sold vegetables in mud while you stole from widows." The sentence hit hard. Chief Boko opened his mouth but found no response. Because everybody around him knew it was true. The market had suffered under his control for years. Now the truth stood exposed before everyone. Two police officers slowly approached Chief Boko. The powerful chairman stepped backward instinctively. "You are making a mistake." Nobody answered. Anita suddenly broke down crying. "Father." The crowd watched silently now. Even people who hated Chief Boko seemed shocked seeing such a powerful man collapse so quickly. Ton stood beside his motorcycle staring in disbelief. Yesterday nobody could challenge this man. Today police officers were preparing to take him away. Life truly changed in one day. Chief Boko looked around desperately one final time. At his guards. At his officers. At the traders. Nobody stepped forward to save him. Nobody. His shoulders slowly dropped. The fight left his eyes. Then the police officers finally took hold of his arms. Mama spread across the market as they began leading him toward the police vehicle. Some traders moved aside quickly. Others watched with satisfaction. A few even smiled openly. Years of fear were ending before their eyes. As Chief Boko passed through the crowd, Papa Akena stared directly at him. "This market belonged to the people," the old man said quietly. Chief Boko lowered his eyes. For once, he had no answer. Anita followed behind crying while officers escorted her father toward the exit road. Phones recorded everything. The once fair chairman entering a police vehicle under public disgrace. By evening, the videos would spread across the entire country. Inside the market, people slowly began speaking louder again. The tension was changing into relief. Women hugged each other emotionally. Some traders thanked God openly. Others surrounded Mama Grace warmly. You suffered too much. You are a strong woman. We are sorry nobody defended you earlier. Mama Grace looked overwhelmed by the sudden attention. I did not expect any of this. Ngozi hugged her carefully. You survived all of it. Mama Grace smiled weakly. But deep inside, she still felt uncomfortable seeing so much public humiliation. Even after everything, hatred did not live naturally inside her heart. Nearby, David watched the police vehicles leave the market. Major Sue stepped beside him. It is finished. David remained silent. No, he said after several seconds. Sue looked at him carefully. This was bigger than one man. His eyes slowly moved across the crowded market. Years of corruption. Fear. Silence. Broken people. Broken lives. Chief Boko had only been the face of it. Then David turned toward his mother again. Mama Grace stood quietly beside her small vegetable table. The same table that started everything. Rainwater still dripped nearby. Mud still covered the ground around her feet. And suddenly David realized something painful. Even after all the military success. Even after all the medals. His mother still returned home every night to poverty. That realization hurt him more deeply than anger. Mama Grace looked up and noticed his expression immediately. My son. David walked closer. You should not be here anymore. She smiled gently. This market fed us for many years. And it also hurt you. Mama Grace remained silent. David carefully picked up one damaged tomato from the muddy table. Then he looked at her again. I promised you something long ago. She studied his face quietly. You remember? I remember every word. The market slowly returned to life after the police vehicles disappeared. Traders reopened stores carefully. People gathered in small groups discussing everything they had witnessed. Some still looked shocked. Others looked relieved, like a heavy burden had finally been removed from their shoulders. But one thing remained the center of every conversation. Mama Grace. The poor vegetable seller everyone ignored had suddenly become the mother of one of the most respected military officers in the country. People now looked at her differently. With respect. With curiosity. Even with fear. But Mama Grace herself had not changed at all. She still stood beside her old wooden table arranging vegetables quietly while traders continued staring at her from different corners of the market. David noticed it immediately. His mother looked uncomfortable with attention. Very uncomfortable. He walked toward her slowly while soldiers remained stationed nearby. Mama. She looked up. You should rest now. There are still vegetables left. David glanced at the nearly empty basket. Nobody will buy properly today. Mama Grace sighed softly because she knew he was right. The entire market was distracted after the dramatic arrest. People were talking more than buying. Ngozi approached carefully. Mama Grace, let me help carry your things home. David immediately spoke. My men will handle it. Mama Grace quickly shook her head. No soldiers should carry vegetables. Several nearby traders laughed softly. Even David smiled faintly. Mama. I am serious. Major Sue quietly signaled two younger soldiers anyway. Within seconds they respectfully lifted the baskets despite Mama Grace protesting gently. People watched the scene in amazement. Armed soldiers carrying vegetables for an old market woman. Nobody in the market would ever forget this day. As they prepared to leave, many traders stepped forward greeting Mama Grace warmly. Some apologized for staying silent during her humiliation. Others thanked David repeatedly. Papa Ekena slowly approached supported by a walking stick. He looked exhausted but emotional. Mama Grace. She quickly held his hand. How are you feeling? I am still alive. They both smiled softly. Then the old trader turned toward David. You came at the right time. David nodded respectfully. I came too late. Papa Ekena shook his head. No. Sometimes God waits until evil becomes too proud. The word stayed in David's mind as they finally left the market. Outside, the convoy vehicles remained parked along the roadside while civilians gathered at safe distances watching curiously. Children pointed excitedly at the soldiers. Street traders whispered among themselves. News reporters had already started arriving nearby after hearing rumors online. Major Sul walked closer to David quietly. Media people are gathering. David frowned slightly. I do not want interviews. Yes, sir. Mama Grace looked confused. Why are reporters coming? Because of today. She sighed tiredly. I only wanted to sell vegetables peacefully. David looked at her carefully. And that should have been possible. One vehicle door opened for Mama Grace respectfully. But she hesitated immediately. This car is too expensive. David almost laughed softly. It is only a vehicle, Mama. She looked nervous stepping inside the clean military SUV with muddy slippers. The younger soldiers pretended not to notice. Once the convoy finally began moving through Enugu streets, people stopped everywhere to watch. Some recognized David from news broadcasts. Others recognized Mama Grace from the viral video. Phones immediately appeared again recording the passing convoy. Inside the vehicle, Mama Grace sat quietly holding her small handbag tightly against her chest. She still looked uncomfortable surrounded by military officers and security vehicles. David noticed. You are afraid? No. Then why are you holding your bag like somebody will steal it? Mama Grace smiled shyly. These cars make me nervous. Major Sul sitting in front smiled slightly while pretending to focus outside. David relaxed a little for the first time that day. For several minutes silence filled the vehicle. Then Mama Grace finally spoke quietly. You have become thinner. David looked surprised. Thinner? You are not eating properly. Major Sul almost coughed trying not to laugh. Even now, after years apart and everything that happened today, the first thing she worried about was food. David shook his head softly. I am fine. No. She touched his arm gently. You carry too much stress. The vehicle became quiet again. Then Mama Grace carefully asked the question she feared most. Are you safe where they send you? David looked outside briefly before answering. As safe as possible. That means no. He smiled faintly. Mama. I pray every night. David slowly lowered his eyes. He knew that already. Because during the worst nights near the border, during gunfire, explosions, and ambushes, he often remembered his mother praying somewhere far away for his survival. And somehow he always survived. The convoy finally entered Mama Grace's neighborhood. Immediately, people rushed outside their homes in shock. Children ran beside the vehicles excitedly. Women whispered loudly from doorways. Nobody had ever seen military convoys inside that poor street before. The vehicle slowly stopped in front of Mama Grace's small house. David stepped out first. Then he froze completely. The house looked worse than he remembered. Far worse. Parts of the roof were damaged badly. The wooden fence leaned sideways. Cracks spread across the walls. Rainwater still dripped from one roof corner into buckets near the entrance. David stared silently for several seconds. Major Sul also looked disturbed. This is where she lives. Nobody answered. Mama Grace stepped out carefully from the vehicle. It looks better during dry season. David slowly turned toward her. You never told me it became this bad. She avoided his eyes. You already had enough worries. Anger mixed with pain inside David again. Not at her. At himself. All these years he sent money whenever possible. But military operations often kept him away from communication for months. Sometimes corrupt middlemen delayed payments. Sometimes emergencies consumed everything around him. And meanwhile his mother continued suffering silently. Neighbors slowly gathered around the compound staring openly now. Some greeted nervously. Others simply watched in disbelief. One elderly woman whispered loudly. That is really her son. Another replied. The whole country is talking about them already. Mama Grace looked embarrassed by the attention. Please do not stand outside. David followed her quietly inside the small house. The moment he entered, his chest tightened. The room felt smaller than his memories. Older. More tired. The leaking roof. The weak furniture. The old photograph still hanging carefully on the wall. And there, beside the window, his childhood school picture remained exactly where she left it years ago. David walked toward it slowly. Mama Grace watched him quietly. You still kept it. She smiled softly. You were proud that day. David stared at the photo silently. A poor boy in oversized school uniform smiling beside his mother. Back then he truly believed he would quickly change her life. But years passed. Work came. Duty came. Distance came. And somehow she remained trapped in hardship while he wore medals. Major Sue quietly stepped outside, giving them privacy. Mama Grace slowly sat on the old wooden chair near the leaking roof bucket. You should remove those heavy boots and rest. David turned toward her. Then his eyes noticed something else. A small sewing needle carefully tied around part of her wrapper. He frowned slightly. What is that? Mama Grace looked embarrassed. My wrapper tore this morning. David stared silently. She had stitched torn clothes and still went to the market smiling. Something inside him hurt deeply again. He slowly walked toward her and knelt beside her chair. This time not as a military officer. Only as a son. You suffered too much while I was away. Mama Grace gently touched his face. No. David looked at her with disbelief. She smiled softly despite the leaking roof and broken house around them. My son came home alive. Then she added quietly. That is enough for me. 3 months later, Enugu market looked completely different. The muddy drainage paths were gone. Broken wooden stalls had disappeared. New roofing covered the market roads, protecting traders from heavy rain and harsh sunlight. Clean water points had been installed near every section. Security cameras stood at the entrances. Small solar lights lined the walkways. Most importantly, illegal taxes were gone. For the first time in many years, poor traders could finally breathe without fear. Women laughed freely again. Children ran safely between stalls. Old traders no longer jumped in fear whenever union officers walked past. Everything had changed. And at the center entrance of the new market stood a large sign. Grace Community Market. People gathered everywhere for the opening ceremony. Government officials arrived. Community leaders came. Local news stations filled the entrance road with cameras and reporters. Even traders from neighboring towns traveled to witness the event everyone across Nigeria had been discussing for months. Near the front stage, Mama Grace sat quietly in a simple but beautiful outfit chosen by Ngozi and several women from the market. She still looked uncomfortable with attention. Some things never changed. Ton stood nearby wearing clean new clothes and smiling proudly. His motorcycle business had grown after people online donated money to support him for helping Mama Grace during her worst day. Papa Akena now walked with less difficulty and sat beside other respected elders near the front. Many traders still found it hard to believe everything that happened. Chief Boko's corruption network had fully collapsed after the investigation expanded nationwide. Several officials connected to the illegal operations were removed from office. Hidden accounts were discovered. Missing market funds were recovered. But Mama Grace never celebrated their downfall. Whenever people spoke angrily about revenge, she always gave the same answer. Justice is enough. And somehow, those simple words spread almost as widely as the viral video itself. Meanwhile, David stood behind the stage in full military uniform preparing for the ceremony. Major Sue smiled while adjusting his gloves. You became more famous than politicians. David shook his head. I never wanted attention. But your mother changed many lives. David looked toward the crowd quietly. No. She had already been changing lives long before cameras arrived. People were simply seeing it now. A government official approached the stage microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate more than a new market. We celebrate courage, dignity, and the strength of a mother who never gave up despite years of suffering. Applause erupted across the crowd. Mama Grace lowered her eyes shyly. The official continued. When one woman was humiliated publicly, the country witnessed not only her pain, but also her strength. Today this market stands as a symbol that no poor person deserves to be treated without dignity. More applause followed. Then the official smiled warmly. And now, we invite Mama Grace and Colonel David Okoro for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. The crowd stood immediately clapping loudly. Cameras flashed everywhere. Mama Grace looked nervous as David gently helped her stand. Together they slowly walked toward the front entrance of the market. People cheered from every direction. Some traders cried openly. Others raised phones high recording the moment. As Mama Grace reached the ribbon, her hands trembled slightly. David leaned closer quietly. You deserve this. She looked at him softly. No. Then she smiled. We survived this. David smiled back. Together they cut the ribbon. The crowd exploded with applause and celebration. Music filled the market. Women danced happily. Children jumped excitedly. For the first time in years, the market no longer belonged to fear. It belonged to the people again. Later that evening, after the crowd slowly disappeared and sunset covered Enugu with golden light, Mama Grace sat quietly outside her newly repaired home. The leaking roof was gone now. Fresh paint covered the walls. Flowers bloomed near the entrance. But despite everything changing around her, she still looked simple and peaceful. David sat beside her wearing plain clothes now instead of military uniform. For several moments they simply watched the evening sky together. Then Mama Grace finally spoke softly. When you were small, you used to say you would protect me one day. David smiled faintly. I remember. You carried vegetables beside me after school. He laughed quietly. And I complained every time. You complained too much. They both laughed softly together. Then silence returned peacefully. Mama Grace looked toward the darkening road. You know, when people mocked me in the market that day, I was not crying because of humiliation. David turned toward her carefully. I was crying because I missed my son. Those words hit him deeply. He slowly lowered his eyes. I should have come home earlier. Mama Grace immediately shook her head. No. She gently held his hand. You were protecting many mothers. David could not speak for several seconds. The evening wind moved softly through the quiet street. Then Mama Grace smiled again. And besides, you still came back. Far away, military convoy lights slowly appeared near the road waiting for David's return to duty. Because soldiers rarely stay home long. David looked toward the vehicles quietly. Then back at his mother. This time, she smiled without sadness. Without fear. Without loneliness. Because now she knew something with certainty. No matter how far her son traveled again, he would always return home. And this time, he would return to a mother the world finally respected. The convoy engine started softly in the distance. David stood slowly. Mama Grace stood with him. Then, just before leaving, Colonel David Okoro hugged his mother tightly beneath the evening sky while the people of the neighborhood watched silently with emotion. The poor vegetable seller once mocked in the mud now stood proudly as the heart of an entire community. And long after the military convoy disappeared into the night, people in Enugu continued telling the story of Mama Grace. The mother who suffered quietly. The son who returned. And the day fear finally lost control of the market. Thank you for listening to this story until the end. If you enjoyed this emotional story, do not forget to leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful family dramas and inspiring stories from Africa and around the world. Your support means everything and helps this channel continue bringing unforgettable stories to life.